The blizzard hit Wyoming without mercy that December night. Jack Morrison, a rancher barely keeping his small spread afloat, found her on Highway 287, a pregnant woman stranded in a broken-down Mercedes, temperature dropping fast. He didn't hesitate. Loading her into his old truck, he brought her to his modest ranch house where his 8-year-old daughter Emma waited. The heater was broken, but Jack had the parts. As he worked through the night fixing it, the woman watched this single father tend to both her comfort and his daughter's needs with quiet grace. She never mentioned her name was Victoria Sinclair, heir to Sinclair Oil. But what would a billionaire want with a struggling rancher who gave everything expecting nothing? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Dawn broke over the Morrison ranch with a peculiar stillness that follows a Wyoming blizzard. The world outside lay buried under 3 feet of fresh snow, transforming the modest property into something from a Christmas card. Inside the small 2-story house, Victoria Sinclair stirred in a bed that smelled of lavender soap and childhood dreams. She opened her eyes to find herself surrounded by crayon drawings taped to pale pink walls. Horses with impossibly long legs galloped across construction paper skies, and stick figures held hands beneath rainbow arcs. In the corner, a well-loved teddy bear kept watch from a child-sized rocking chair. This was Emma's room, Victoria realized, and the little girl had given up her bed without complaint. The aroma of coffee and something sweet drifted up the stairs. Victoria wrapped the borrowed flannel robe tighter around her swollen belly and made her way down, each step creaking a greeting beneath her feet. The house spoke of age and care, woodwork worn smooth by generations of hands, photographs clustered on walls like memories refusing to fade. She paused at the kitchen doorway. Jack Morrison stood at the stove, his broad back to her, flipping pancakes with the practiced ease of a man who'd done this thousands of times. Beside him, Emma perched on a stepping stool, her small hands carefully arranging sliced bananas on a plate. Both wore matching aprons, his navy blue and serviceable, hers decorated with cartoon ponies. "Is the pretty lady awake yet, Daddy?" Emma's voice carried the hopeful tune of childhood curiosity. "We'll see, sweet pea. Remember what we talked about? She needs rest." Jack's voice held that particular gentle firmness parents master, love wrapped in guidance. "I'm awake," Victoria said softly, not wanting to startle them. Emma spun around so fast she nearly toppled from her stool. Jack's steady hand caught her shoulder, keeping her balanced even as he turned to face their guest. In the morning light streaming through gingham curtains, Victoria could see him clearly for the first time. Weathered lines mapped years of sun and whined across his face, but his eyes, deep brown like rich earth, held a kindness that made her breath catch. "Morning," he said simply. "Hope you slept all right." "Emma's bed isn't exactly built for adults." "It was perfect," Victoria assured. Meaning it, she couldn't remember the last time she'd slept so soundly. In her Denver penthouse, with its king-sized bed and Egyptian cotton sheets, sleep came fitfully between board meetings and international calls. Emma bounced on her toes. "Daddy's making special pancakes with bananas. Do you like bananas?" Baby probably likes bananas. Babies like fruit. Mrs. Henderson at school said so." "Emma," Jack's tone carried a gentle warning. "It's fine," Victoria laughed, one hand moving instinctively to her belly. "And yes, we both love bananas." They settled around the small kitchen table, its surface scarred by years of use, but polished to a warm glow. Victoria noticed how Jack served Emma first, cutting her pancakes into perfect bite-sized pieces before attending to his guest. His own plate remained empty until both of them were settled. "This is delicious," Victoria said after her first bite, and she wasn't being polite. The pancakes were light, fluffy, with a hint of vanilla she hadn't expected. "Secret ingredient," Emma whispered conspiratorially. "Daddy puts love in them." Jack's cheeks colored slightly. "Emma reads too many of those princess books." "Nothing wrong with believing in love," Victoria said quietly. watching this father and daughter who'd opened their home to a stranger without question. As they ate, she took in more details. The refrigerator door served as an art gallery, displaying Emma's school projects. A calendar hung beside it marked with careful notations: Emma dentist, cattle auction, mortgage due. That last one appeared every month, and Victoria noticed how many remained uncrossed. Jack followed her gaze and shifted uncomfortably. Chuck should be by soon with his tow truck. Roads might be clear enough by noon. Of course, Victoria murmured, though something in her chest tightened at the thought of leaving this warm kitchen, this gentle morning rhythm. Emma's face fell. But you just got here. The lady has a life to get back to, Em, Jack said gently. We were just helping out in a storm. Just helping out. Victoria watched Jack clear the plates, refusing her offer to help, and wondered when anyone had last helped without wanting something in return. In her world, kindness came with contracts, generosity with expectations. She thought of the board meeting scheduled for tomorrow, the pipeline proposals waiting on her desk, the endless dance of power and profit. Here, in this simple kitchen with its worn linoleum and hand-sewn curtains, she'd found something she hadn't known she was missing: peace. The tow truck arrived just after 10, grinding up the snow-packed drive with Chuck Williams at the wheel. Victoria watched from the window as the burly man climbed out, his breath clouding in the frigid air. She'd already called her assistant 3 times, each call going to voicemail. The 4th call she let ring through, knowing Margaret would panic if she didn't check in soon. "That's Chuck," Jack said, pulling on his work coat. "Good man, been neighbors since we were kids. He'll take care of your car." Victoria followed him onto the porch, Emma trailing behind them like a determined shadow. The little girl had found an old ranch jacket somewhere and insisted Victoria wear it. The coat smelled of hay and horses, hanging loose on her frame, but surprisingly warm. "Well, well," Chuck called out, his grin wide beneath a John Deere cap. "Jack Morrison playing highway hero. Should have known you'd be out in that mess last night." "Just happened to be passing by," Jack said, but Victoria caught the slight tension in his shoulders. Men like Jack didn't boast about good deeds. Chuck's eyes found Victoria, taking in her borrowed coat over what he could see of her designer maternity dress. His expression shifted, curious but polite. "Ma'am, that's quite a car you've got there. Don't see many Mercedes in these parts, especially not the S-Class." Victoria's phone buzzed insistently in her pocket. She ignored it. "It was my father's idea," she said, which was true enough. Richard Sinclair had insisted she take the armored vehicle for the Wyoming trip. Perhaps a bit much for mountain roads. "Bit much?" Chuck whistled low. "That's $100,000 car if it's a penny. You sure you want me touching it? Might need a specialty shop in Cheyenne." "I trust Jack's recommendation," Victoria said simply, watching surprise flicker across Jack's face. While the men discussed logistics, Emma tugged on Victoria's borrowed coat. "Are you a princess?" she whispered. "You have princess hair." Victoria knelt carefully, mindful of her balance. "What makes you think that?" "Daddy read me a story about a princess who dressed like normal people to see if they were nice." "You're doing that, aren't you?" The innocence of the question made Victoria's chest tight. "Something like that," she admitted softly. "But it's our secret, okay?" Emma's eyes went wide with delight. She mimed, zipping her lips, locking them, and throwing away the key. "Victoria?" Jack's voice drew her attention. "Chuck needs your keys." She fished them from her purse, the Hermes leather looking absurdly out of place against the rough wooden porch rail. As she handed over the keys, her phone rang again. This time, Richard Sinclair's name flashed on the screen. Her father. She declined the call. "Everything all right?" Jack asked, frowning. "Just work," she said. "Nothing that can't wait." Chuck drove the Mercedes onto his flatbed with practiced ease, the luxury vehicle looking like a misplaced jewel against the rusty truck. Jack insisted on inspecting everything, checking the chain attachments himself. Victoria noticed how he moved, efficient and careful, treating her property with the same attention he'd shown everything else. "Daddy always checks twice," Emma informed her. "He says measure twice, cut once, but he means it about everything." "Smart man," Victoria murmured, watching Jack confer with Chuck about the best route to avoid ice patches. Her phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. "The board is asking questions." "Where are you?" Victoria typed back quickly. "Family emergency, handle it." It wasn't entirely a lie. Standing here on this windswept porch, watching a little girl draw patterns in the snow with a stick, she felt more like family than she had. "At last month's Sinclair Oil executive dinner. All set," Jack announced, returning to the porch. "Chuck'll take good care of it. Might be a day or two for parts, depending on what's wrong." "A day or two?" Victoria tried to sound concerned, rather, then pleased. "Afraid so," Chuck said, but his eyes twinkled with something knowing. "Unless you need to get back urgent-like. Could probably find you a rental in town." "No," Victoria said quickly. Too quickly. "I mean, that's fine. I can manage." Jack shifted uncomfortably. "We can't put you up that long. There's a motel in town." "The wagon wheel's full up," Chuck interrupted. "Stranded travelers from the interstate. Heard it on the radio coming over." He winked at Emma, who giggled behind her mittened hand. "Well then," Jack said slowly, and Victoria could see him wrestling with mountain hospitality and propriety. "Guess you're stuck with us a bit longer." As Chuck's tow truck rumbled away with her Mercedes, Victoria's phone rang once more. This time she recognized the number. The head of acquisitions, probably calling about the Patterson Ranch deal. She let it ring, watching Emma show her father the snow angel she'd made. "You sure you don't need to get that?" Jack asked. Victoria thought of the Sinclair Oil business card hidden in her coat pocket, of the empire waiting for her return, of the deception she was weaving with every passing minute. "I'm sure," she said, and switched her phone to silent, for now she could be just Victoria, a woman stranded by a storm, welcomed by strangers who asked for nothing but offered everything. The truth could wait another day. Victoria's Denver penthouse felt like a museum after 3 days at the Morrison ranch. The cathedral ceilings soared overhead, making her footsteps echo on the Italian marble. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city skyline. But all she could see was the view from Emma's bedroom, snow-covered fields stretching toward mountains that touched the sky. Margaret had arranged everything with typical efficiency. Fresh flowers adorned every surface, mail sorted in priority stacks, her favorite decaf coffee brewing in the kitchen. Yet Victoria found herself missing instant coffee in chipped mugs, Emma's chatter over breakfast, Jack's quiet presence as he worked. "The board meeting's been rescheduled for 2, Margaret announced, hovering with her tablet. "Your father insisted on moving it up. Something about the Wyoming pipeline acceleration." Wyoming. Victoria's hand stilled on the contract. She'd been pretending to read. "What about the pipeline?" "Phase 3 expansion. They're looking at new routes through the Eastern Corridor." Margaret pulled up the presentation. "The most cost-effective path runs through Ironwood Valley." The words hit Victoria like cold water. Ironwood Valley, Jack's ranch, sat in the heart. Of that valley, 5 generations of Morrison land that would be directly in the pipeline's path. "I need to see the full proposal," Victoria said, her voice steadier than her hands. She spent the next hour poring over environmental impact studies, route analyses and acquisition projections. Her father's team had been thorough. The Ironwood route would save Sinclair Oil $40 million in construction costs. The small ranches along the path were struggling, easy targets for buyouts or eminent domain if necessary. Jack's name wasn't on the documents yet, but it would be. The Morrison Ranch sat squarely in the optimal path. At 2 o'clock, Victoria entered the boardroom with steel in her spine. The directors sat in their usual positions, her father commanding the head of the table like a general surveying his battlefield. Victoria, Richard Sinclair acknowledged with a nod. "Good of you to join us after your unexpected absence." "Family emergency," she said smoothly, taking her seat. "I wasn't aware we had family in Wyoming," her father remarked, his grey eyes sharp as flint. "We have interests everywhere," Victoria deflected. "Shall we discuss the pipeline?" The presentation unfolded exactly as she'd expected. Charts showing profit margins, timelines promising completion before the next fiscal year, environmental concerns dismissed with practiced ease. When the Ironwood Valley route appeared on screen, Victoria forced herself to remain still. As you can see, the project manager explained, this route provides optimal access with minimal resistance. Most of the landowners are already behind. On mortgages, we anticipate easy acquisition. What about the environmental impact? Victoria asked. That valley has 3 watershed sources, all within acceptable parameters, someone assured her. Acceptable to whom? Victoria pressed. The families who've lived there for generations? The cattle that depend on that water? Her father's eyes narrowed slightly. A warning. Since when? Do you concern yourself with cattle, Victoria? Since we started putting pipelines through their grazing lands, she replied evenly. I'd like to see alternative routes. The alternatives add 40 million to the budget, the CFO protested. Then we find it elsewhere. Victoria pulled up her tablet. I've been reviewing our holdings. The Patterson Ranch deal, for instance. We're overpaying by 30%. The room stirred. Victoria never challenged acquisitions, especially not publicly. That's a separate matter, her father said, voice cooling. Is it? We're willing to overpay for land we don't need while forcing families off land they've worked for generations? Victoria met his gaze steadily. That seems inconsistent with our stated values. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Richard Sinclair didn't appreciate being challenged, especially by his daughter. Perhaps we should table this pending further review, the CFO suggested nervously. Agreed, Victoria said before her father could object. I'll personally assess the Ironwood situation. I know the area. Do you now? Her father's tone could have etched glass. After the meeting, Victoria didn't wait for the inevitable summons. She went straight to her office and began pulling every document on Ironwood Valley. Surveys, tax records, historical data. The Morrison Ranch appeared in file after file, 640 acres of prime land in the family. Since 1876, she found the obituary online. Sarah Morrison, beloved wife and mother, died in childbirth 8 years ago. The photo showed a woman with Emma's eyes and Jack's smile. The funeral notice mentioned the Morrison family plot, 5 generations resting in Ironwood soil. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown Wyoming number. Cars fixed. Chuck can deliver tomorrow if you need. Hope you made it home safe. Jack. Victoria stared at the message, thumb hovering over the keyboard. She thought of Jack checking her Mercedes twice, making sure everything was secure. Of Emma's friendship bracelet, now wrapped carefully in tissue in her jewelry box. Of a kitchen where kindness came without contracts. She made a decision that would change everything. Margaret, she called, clear my schedule for the next week. I'm going back to Wyoming. The Patterson meeting can wait. Victoria was already pulling up property listings on her tablet. I need you to find something for me. A ranch for a sale in Ironwood Valley. Something that needs work. If she couldn't stop the pipeline yet, she could at least get closer to the situation, closer to understanding what her father's ambitions would cost, closer to the man who'd fixed her heater and asked for nothing in return. She texted Jack back, actually, I might be returning to the area soon. Investment opportunity. Know anyone who could advise on ranch properties? His response came quickly. Be happy to help. That's what neighbors do. Neighbors. Victoria smiled, already planning her return to Ironwood Valley. The knock came just as Jack finished the evening milking. He wasn't expecting anyone. Chuck had already stopped by that morning, and the vet wasn't due until Thursday. Emma was upstairs doing homework, or at least pretending to, while probably drawing horses in her notebook margins. He opened the door to find Victoria Sinclair standing on his porch, snow dusting her shoulders like stardust. This time she wore practical boots and a down jacket, though he'd bet his best bull they came from some fancy Denver boutique. Her rental car, a modest SUV instead of a Mercedes, sat in his drive. Victoria. He couldn't hide his surprise. Is everything all right? Hello, Jack. Her smile seemed nervous, uncertain. "I hope I'm not intruding. I should have called first, but I was in the area and— Miss Victoria!" Emma's shriek of delight cut through any awkwardness. The 8-year-old flew past her father and wrapped her arms around Victoria's legs, grammar homework forgotten. "You came back. I knew you'd come back. Daddy said you had important things in the city, but I knew you'd come back." "Emma, let her. Breathe," Jack said gently, but he was fighting his own smile. His daughter hadn't been this animated in days. "It's fine," Victoria laughed, one hand steadying herself against the doorframe, the other resting on Emma's head. "I missed you too, sweetheart." Jack stepped aside. "Come in out of the cold. Coffee? That would be wonderful." They settled into the kitchen while Emma bounced around Victoria like an excited puppy, showing off her latest drawings, her improved cursive, the gap where she'd lost another tooth. Jack busied himself with the coffee maker, stealing glances at their unexpected guest. She looked tired, he noticed. Beautiful still, but something weighed on her. "So what brings you back to Ironwood?" he asked, setting a mug in front of her. Same chipped mug from before. He wondered if she remembered. "Business, actually." Victoria wrapped her hands around the ceramic, seeking warmth. "I'm looking at investment properties in the area. Rural real estate is undervalued right now, and I think this region has potential." "Investment properties?" Jack tried to keep the disappointment from his voice. "Another city person looking to buy up land for vacation homes or hunting lodges. Working ranches specifically," Victoria clarified. "Properties that need capital investment but could be profitable with the right management." She met his eyes. "I was hoping you might advise me. You know this valley better than anyone." "Don't know much about investment," Jack said carefully. "Just know ranching. That's exactly what I need." Victoria pulled out a folder. "I've identified a few properties, but I need someone who understands the land, the challenges. I'd pay you, of course, consulting fee." Jack's pride bristled. "Don't need charity, Victoria." "It's not." She stopped, seeming to reconsider her words. "You'd be doing me a favor. I could hire some city consultant who's never birthed a calf, or fixed fence in a blizzard, or I could work with someone who actually knows what makes a ranch succeed or fail." Before Jack could respond, Chuck's truck rumbled up the drive again. Unusual for him to visit twice in one day. Even more unusual was the grim set of his friend's face as he climbed out. "Sorry to interrupt," Chuck said, nodding to Victoria. "Ma'am, Jack, you got a minute?" They stepped onto the porch. Chuck pulled a folded paper from his jacket. Official looking, with the bank's letterhead visible. "Figured I'd bring it over." "Myself before you got it in the mail," Chuck said quietly. "Final notice, Jack. 30 days. Jack's stomach dropped. He'd known it was coming, but seeing it in black and white made it real. 30 days until the bank started foreclosure proceedings. 5 generations of Morrisons on this land, and he'd be the one to lose it. "I'm working on it," Jack said, though they both knew his options had run out. Cattle prices were down, his small herd couldn't cover the back payments, and he'd already sold everything that wasn't nailed down. "I know you are." Chuck gripped his shoulder. "If I had it to give—" "I know." Jack folded the notice carefully. "Thanks for bringing it yourself." When he returned to the kitchen, Victoria was helping Emma with her math homework. The sight of them together, heads bent over the worksheet, made his chest tight with emotions he couldn't afford. "Everything okay?" Victoria asked, looking up. "Fine," Jack lied. Chuck just needed to drop something off, but Emma, perceptive as always, sensed the change in her father's mood. "Are we in trouble, Daddy?" "No, sweetheart. Adult stuff. Nothing. Oh, for you to worry about." Victoria's eyes tracked to where he'd tucked the notice in his shirt pocket. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. "About that consulting arrangement," she said carefully. "I could offer a retainer, up front. Standard practice in my business." "Victoria, 3 months advance minimum. Say, 15,000. That's the going rate for agricultural consultants." Jack's hands stilled on the dish towel. 15,000 would cover the back payments with enough left to get through spring. It was exactly what he needed, which meant she knew exactly how much trouble he was in. "That's too much," he said quietly. It's fair market value. Victoria pulled out her phone, already typing. I can transfer it tonight if you have banking details. We'll start tomorrow. Look at the Harrison place first. I heard it might be available. The Harrison place is a mess, Jack said automatically. Fence is down, well needs work. House hasn't been updated since the 50s. See, Victoria smiled. That's exactly the kind of insight I need. You just saved me from a bad investment. Jack looked at her, really looked, sitting at his kitchen table in her expensive clothes, playing math tutor to his daughter, offering him dignity along with salvation. He should say no, should protect what was left of his pride, but Emma was laughing at something Victoria said, and the foreclosure notice burned in his pocket, and sometimes a man had to choose his daughter's future over his own ego. All right, he said finally, but we do this proper, real work, real advice. I won't take money for nothing. I wouldn't expect anything less. Victoria's smile reached her eyes this time. Partners? She extended her hand. After a moment, Jack took it. Her grip was firmer than he expected, her skin soft except for a callus on her thumb he couldn't explain. Partners, he agreed. Emma cheered like they'd announced Christmas had come early. In a way, Jack supposed it had. Later, after dinner, Victoria stayed, of course. Emma wouldn't hear of her leaving. Jack found himself on the porch while Victoria helped with bedtime stories. The stars spread above Ironwood Valley like scattered diamonds, the same view his great-great-grandfather had seen when he'd first claimed this land. He pulled out the foreclosure notice, reading it by porch light. 30 days had seemed like a death sentence an hour ago. Now he had a chance, mysterious as it might be. Through the window, he could hear Emma's voice, animated and happy. And then the princess saved the whole kingdom. But she didn't tell anyone it was her, because she wanted them to be brave on their own. Victoria's gentle laugh followed. That's a good story, Emma. Sometimes the best help comes quietly. Jack folded the notice again, tucking it away. Tomorrow he'd take Victoria to look at ranches, earn his consulting fee with honest work. He'd save his land, keep his daughter's home secure. He didn't question why a wealthy woman needed his help, or why her offer matched his needs so perfectly. Gift horses and all that. But standing there under stars that had watched 5 generations of Morrisons work this land, Jack Morrison made himself a promise. Whatever Victoria Sinclair's real reason for being here, he'd protect her as surely as she was protecting them. That's what neighbors did. That's what partners did, even if he didn't quite understand yet what they were partners in. Jack hadn't slept. The wire transfer confirmation sat on his kitchen table next to his coffee mug, the numbers still seeming impossible. $15,000 deposited as promised. The consulting contract Victoria had emailed was thorough, but fair. She'd even included provisions for expense reimbursement and flexible scheduling around his ranch duties. The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten when he heard footsteps on the stairs. Emma appeared in her pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Why are you up so early, Daddy?" "Couldn't sleep, sweetheart. Want some breakfast?" "Is Miss Victoria coming today?" Emma climbed into her chair, suddenly more awake. "She is. We're going to look at some ranches. Can I come?" Jack considered. It was Saturday, no school, and maybe having Emma along would ease the awkwardness he felt about this arrangement. "If you promise to behave." "I always behave," Emma protested, then grinned. "Mostly." By 8 o'clock, Jack had already called the bank. The relief in the loan officer's voice had been palpable. Apparently nobody wanted to foreclose on the Morrison ranch. Too much history, too much respect for the family name. But business was business, and payments were payments. "Glad you found a solution, Jack," Tom Hendricks had said. "Your daddy would be proud." Jack wasn't sure about that. Taking money from a woman, even for honest work, would have gone against everything his father had taught him about self-reliance. But his father had never been a widower with a daughter to raise. Victoria arrived at 9 sharp, dressed in jeans that actually looked worn, and boots that showed honest mud on the soles. She'd done her homework, or someone had advised her well. "Morning. Partner," she said, and the word made something warm bloom in his chest. "Morning. Coffee before we head out." Always. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where she'd offered salvation wrapped in dignity, and reviewed her list of properties. Jack recognized most of them. Failed ranches, abandoned homesteads, places where dreams had withered like summer grass in drought. "The Harrison place first," Victoria said, marking her map. "Then the old Garrett spread, and maybe the Paulson Ranch if we have time." "Paulson's not for sale," Jack noted. "Not officially, but I heard they might be persuaded." Victoria's expression grew thoughtful. "Times are hard for small ranchers." "Don't I know it?" Jack muttered, then caught himself. "Sorry, that wasn't professional. It was honest," Victoria corrected. "That's what I'm paying for, your honest assessment." They loaded into Jack's truck. Victoria didn't protest the change from her rental, understanding instinctively that showing up to ranch properties in his familiar vehicle would open more doors. Emma chattered from the back seat, pointing out landmarks and sharing the elaborate backstories she'd created for each. "That's where the ghost cowboys camp," she announced, indicating a cluster of cottonwoods. "They're friendly ghosts, though. They help lost calves find their mamas." "That's very considerate of them," Victoria said seriously. The Harrison place was indeed a mess. Fences sagged like tired old men, thistles had claimed the front pasture, and the house looked like a strong wind might finish what time had started. Jack walked Victoria through everything, noting water rights, soil quality, the potential for restoration. "How much would it take to make it profitable?" Victoria asked, taking notes on her tablet. "More than it's worth, honestly. You'd need new fencing, definitely a new well. House would have to be rebuilt from the foundation up. Probably 80,000 minimum just to make it livable. But the land itself." Jack looked out over the neglected acres, seeing past the decay to what it had been, what it could be again. Good grass under those weeds, solid water rights. Someone who knew what they were doing could run maybe 50 head here, grow hay on the bottom land. "Someone like you?" The question caught him off guard. "I've got my own place to run." Of course. Victoria made another note. Just thinking out loud. Emma had wandered to the old garden plot, now overgrown with volunteer asparagus and rhubarb. "Daddy, look, food growing wild." "That's Mrs. Harrison's garden," Jack explained. "She passed 5 years back. Guess her plants kept going without her." "That's sad," Emma said, then brightened, "but also kind of beautiful, like she's still feeding people." Victoria watched Emma with an expression Jack couldn't read. "Out of the mouths of babes," she murmured. They visited 2 more properties before lunch. At each, Jack gave his honest assessment. This one had bad water. That one was too far from the highway for profitable cattle transport. Victoria took it all in, asking smart questions that showed she'd done more than surface research. "You know," Jack said as they drove back, "most investors would have already bought the Harrison place based on the acreage and tax benefits alone." "I'm not most investors," Victoria replied. "I want something that can actually work, not just look good on paper." "Why?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. "Why do you care if these ranches succeed?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment, watching the valley roll past the window. "Because places like this matter. They're not just investments or tax shelters. They're homes, legacies. They deserve better than to be carved up for vacation houses or left to rot." "That's not very businesslike," Jack observed. "Maybe not." Victoria turned to smile at him. "Good thing I've got a practical consultant to keep me grounded." Emma had fallen asleep in the back seat, worn out from adventure. In the quiet of the truck cab, with the familiar roads unwinding before them, Jack felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. The weeks fell into a rhythm, as natural as the seasons. Victoria arrived every Friday afternoon, staying through Sunday at the modest bed and breakfast in town. Saturdays were for property visits, Sundays for paperwork and planning. But somehow, she always ended up at the Morrison ranch for meals, drawn by Emma's insistence and Jack's quiet welcome. "Miss Victoria, look!" Emma thrust her report card across the dinner table one evening. "Mrs. Patterson says my reading improved 2 whole levels." Victoria studied the grades with genuine interest. "This is wonderful, Emma. You've been working so hard." "She has," Jack confirmed, serving pot roast from his grandmother's platter, "though I can't take much credit. Someone's been helping with homework." He meant it as gentle teasing, but Victoria's cheeks pinked. Over the past 3 weeks, she'd fallen into tutoring Emma during their evening visits. What started as casual help had become dedicated study sessions, with Victoria explaining math concepts in ways that finally clicked for the 8-year-old. "I enjoy it," Victoria said simply. "Emma's a quick learner when someone takes the time." Jack watched them bent over Emma's geography homework later, Victoria's patience endless as Emma struggled with state capitals. His daughter had always been shy with strangers, slower to trust since losing her mother, but with Victoria, she bloomed like spring wildflowers after rain. "How do you know so much about everything?" Emma asked, pencil tapping against her workbook. "I had good teachers," Victoria replied, "and I read constantly. Books can take you anywhere." "Daddy says that too. He reads to me every night." Emma glanced at her father. "Maybe Miss Victoria could read tonight's chapter. She does different voices better." "Emma," Jack started, but Victoria was already smiling. "I'd be honored if your dad doesn't mind sharing story duty." They were halfway through Charlotte's Web, and Victoria threw herself into the characters with theatrical flair that had Emma giggling. Jack leaned in the doorway, coffee mug warm in his hands, watching his daughter's face light up with each voice change. This was dangerous, he knew. Emma was getting attached. Hell, he was getting attached. But how could he deny his daughter these moments of joy? His phone buzzed. Chuck's name appeared on the screen. "Hey, Jack, you might want to know, people are talking about your lady friend." Jack stepped into the hall, lowering his voice. "She's not my lady friend. She's a business associate." "Sure she is." Chuck's tone carried knowing humor. "Business associate who has dinner at your place 4 nights a week, who helps Emma with homework, who looks at you like you hung the moon." "Chuck, I'm not criticizing. Lord knows you deserve some happiness. Just thought you should know the town gossips are having a field day. Martha Henderson saw her buying groceries yesterday, fancy organic stuff from the city, but also your favorite coffee brand." Jack's chest tightened. He'd mentioned once, in passing, that he preferred the local roaster's dark blend. So, she's paying attention, friend. Question is, are you? After Chuck hung up, Jack stood in the hallway listening to Victoria read about Wilbur's adventures. Her voice carried warmth and life, bringing joy to his daughter's bedtime routine. When did she memorize their grocery preferences? When did she start anticipating their needs? "Daddy," Emma called, "come listen, Charlotte's about to save Wilbur." He returned to find Victoria on Emma's bed, his daughter curled against her side. The sight hit him like a physical blow. How perfectly she fit into the empty space in their lives. How natural this felt. "All good?" Victoria asked, noticing his expression. "Fine, just Chuck checking in." Jack took his usual chair. "Don't let me interrupt Charlotte's heroics." Later, after Emma was asleep, they sat on the porch despite the cold. Victoria wrapped in one of his old ranch jackets, looking more beautiful than anyone had a right to in worn flannel. "She's doing so well in school," Victoria said. "You should be proud." "I am, though lately I think you deserve the credit. I just help a little. You're the one who's raised an amazing kid." Victoria pulled the jacket tighter. "She talks about her mother sometimes, during homework." Jack's hands stilled on his coffee mug. "What does she say?" "That she was pretty, that she smelled like vanilla, that you have her picture by your bed, and sometimes you look sad when you don't think Emma's not watching." The words hung between them, truth laid bare by a child's innocent observations. "I failed her," Jack said quietly. "Sarah, the ranch was struggling even then, and I worked constantly. Missed appointments, wasn't there when—" He stopped, throat tight. "Maybe if I'd been home that night instead of at the cattle auction." "Jack." Victoria's hand covered his, warm and steady. "What happened to Sarah wasn't your fault, wasn't it? I knew the pregnancy was high risk, knew we should have been closer to the hospital. But I was too proud to leave the ranch, too stubborn to admit we needed help. You were trying to provide for your family. That's not a failing." Jack looked at their joined hands, her skin pale against his weathered fingers. "Sometimes I think Emma deserves better. A mother who can braid her hair properly, help with girl things. Someone who knows about more than cattle and crops." "She has exactly what she needs," Victoria said firmly. "A father who loves her unconditionally, who reads to her every night despite exhaustion, who shows her every day what strength and kindness look like. You give me too much credit. I give you exactly the credit you deserve." Victoria squeezed his hand before letting go. "That little girl adores you, Jack Morrison, and she's absolutely right to." They sat in comfortable silence, watching. Stars emerge above Ironwood Valley. Inside, something shifted in Jack's chest, walls carefully built over 8 years beginning to crack. Trust, he realized. Somehow, without meaning to, he'd started trusting Victoria Sinclair with more than ranch advice. He'd started trusting her with their hearts. Victoria's two worlds nearly collided on a Tuesday morning in the Ironwood Valley General Store. She was selecting apples, the Honeycrisps Emma loved, when a familiar voice made her blood freeze. Victoria Sinclair, she turned to find David Chen, Sinclair Oil's senior board member, staring at her in undisguised shock. Her mind raced through explanations, excuses, anything to justify why the heir to an oil empire was grocery shopping in a town of 800 people. "David," she managed, voice steady despite her hammering heart, "what brings you to Wyoming?" "Investigating potential pipeline routes." His eyes took in her casual clothes, the worn jacket she'd borrowed from Jack, and never returned. "The better question is what brings you here. Your assistant said you were visiting investment properties, but this seems rather rural for your usual interests." "Diversification," Victoria said smoothly. "Ranch land is undervalued. I'm exploring opportunities in person. Surely you have people for that." Before she could respond, Emma's voice rang out across the store. "Miss Victoria, I found the cereal, the healthy kind you said would help my brain grow." Victoria's stomach dropped as Emma bounded over, pigtails flying, clutching a box of whole-grain cereal. The little girl stopped short at the sight of David, pressing closer to Victoria's side. "Emma, this is Mr. Chen, a business associate," Victoria managed. "David, this is Emma Morrison. I'm consulting with her father on local ranch operations." David's expression shifted, calculating. "Morrison, as in Jack Morrison. Doesn't his property sit in the proposed Ironwood corridor?" "Daddy's ranch is the best in the valley," Emma declared with 8-year-old certainty. "He knows everything about cows and horses and fixing things. That's why Miss Victoria hired him." "Is that so?" David's smile didn't reach his eyes. How fortunate for everyone involved. After he left, Victoria's hands shook as she loaded groceries into her car. Emma chattered happily, unaware of the danger that had just passed. But Victoria knew David would report this to her father. Questions would be asked. Investigations launched. She had to be more careful. The close calls continued. Later that week, Jack found a folder in her rental car while helping load ranch supplies. The Sinclair Oil logo blazed across the cover before Victoria quickly snatched it away. "Pipeline. Documents," she said, tucking the folder into her bag. "Competitor analysis for the investment properties." Jack's expression was thoughtful. "Sinclair Oil. They're the ones folks are worried about. Rumors say they're looking at running a pipeline straight through the valley." "Rumors can be exaggerated," Victoria said carefully. "Maybe, but Chuck's cousin works for the county planning office. Says they've had surveyors out taking measurements." Jack's jaw tightened. "Companies like that don't care about places like this. Just see dollar signs where we see homes." Victoria wanted to protest, to defend her family's company. But how? Could she, when Jack was right? In every board meeting, Ironwood Valley was just numbers on a spreadsheet, profit margins and construction costs. "Not all companies operate that way," she said finally. "No." Jack's laugh was bitter. Name one oil company that's chosen community over profit. She couldn't, and they both knew it. The worst moment came Thursday afternoon. Emma had spiked a fever at school, and the nurse couldn't reach Jack. He was in the far pasture, fixing fence where cell service didn't reach. In desperation, the school called Victoria, whose number was listed as an emergency contact. She didn't hesitate, racing to Ironwood Elementary in record time. Her dad's not answering, the school secretary explained, worry creasing her face. Emma keeps asking for you, and since you're on the authorized list. Victoria gathered the feverish little girl into her arms, Emma immediately burrowing into her shoulder. It's okay, sweetheart. I've got you. She took Emma home, gave her medicine, and settled her on the couch with cool cloths and gentle stories. By the time Jack burst through the door, wild-eyed with worry, Emma's fever had broken. The school called Chuck when they couldn't find me, he panted. He said Victoria had her. He stopped, taking in the scene. Emma, sleeping peacefully, Victoria's hand smoothing her hair. She's okay, Victoria assured him quickly. Fever broke an hour ago, just needs rest. Jack crossed to the couch in 3 strides, kneeling beside his daughter. His hand trembled as he checked her forehead, confirmed the fever's retreat. Thank you, he said roughly. I should have been here. You couldn't have known, and I was happy to help. He looked up at her then, something raw and vulnerable in his expression. When Chuck said Emma was sick, that you had her, I've never driven so fast in my life, but under the panic there was this feeling of relief, because I knew she was safe with you, knew you'd take care of her like... He stopped, but Victoria, and heard the unfinished sentence. Like a mother would. Always, she promised, the word escaping before she could stop it. I'll always be here when you need me. It was a dangerous promise, one she might not be able to keep. But looking at Jack's grateful face, at Emma sleeping trustingly between them, Victoria knew she meant every word, even if her 2 worlds were spinning closer to collision with every passing day. December arrived in Ironwood Valley with a vengeance, blanketing the ranch lands in snow so deep it reached the fence posts. Jack stood in the barn, watching Victoria help Emma create paper snowflakes for the upcoming Christmas pageant. They'd commandeered his workbench, turning it into a craft station complete with glitter that would likely sparkle in the barn until spring. Make sure you fold it tight, Victoria instructed, guiding Emma's small hands. That's how you get the intricate patterns. Intricate, Emma sounded out carefully. That means complicated but pretty, right? Exactly right. Victoria's smile could have powered the whole valley. You're getting so smart with your vocabulary. Jack's chest tightened with familiar warmth. Over the past weeks, Victoria had woven herself into their daily life so completely he couldn't imagine the ranch without her. She arrived bearing groceries without being asked, helped with homework naturally, and stayed for dinners that stretched into evenings filled with laughter. Daddy, look, Emma held up her creation. It's for the big tree at church. Mrs. Henderson says everyone's bringing decorations. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Jack meant it. The snowflake was lopsided but made with such concentration it might have been spun crystal. Miss Victoria's making one too, Emma added, but she won't let me see it. Says it's a surprise. Victoria's cheeks pinked, just trying something special. Later, after Emma ran off to hang her snowflakes in her room, Jack found Victoria still at the workbench. She was cutting an intricate pattern into the paper, her movements precise, despite the borrowed work gloves she wore. That's elaborate, he observed, moving closer. My mother taught me when I was young. Victoria's voice carried a wistfulness he rarely heard. Before she got too busy with charity galas and board positions, we'd spend hours making decorations for the staff quarters, trying to outdo each other with complexity. Staff quarters. Jack kept his tone casual, but filed the information away, another piece of the Victoria Sinclair puzzle. We had a big house growing up, she said vaguely. Lots of people to make happy at Christmas. She unfolded the snowflake, revealing a pattern so delicate it looked like lace. In the center, barely visible unless you knew to look, she'd cut the letters J and E intertwined. It's beautiful, Jack said, throat suddenly tight. It's for your tree. if you'll have it. Victoria set the snowflake down carefully. I noticed. You don't have many decorations. Sarah loved Christmas, Jack admitted. After she died, I boxed most of it up. Too many memories. Emma and I just put up a small tree, few lights. Nothing fancy. Maybe it's time for new traditions, Victoria suggested gently. Emma's old enough to help create them. Speaking of which, Jack rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly awkward. Emma's been pestering me about Christmas Eve, wants to know if you'll spend it with us. I told her you probably have plans, family obligations in the city. I don't, Victoria interrupted. My father hosts a corporate party. 500 of his closest business associates. I usually make an appearance and escape to my apartment. She met his eyes. I'd much rather be here. If the invitation's genuine, it's genuine. The words came out rougher than intended. Emma would be thrilled, and we'd like having you. Victoria's smile transformed her face. Then I'll be here. They decorated the tree that evening, the three of them. Jack hauled out the boxes he'd hidden in the attic, and if his hands shook a little opening them, Victoria pretended not to notice. Emma exclaimed over each ornament, demanding stories about their origins. This one's from your mum and dad's first Christmas, Jack explained, holding a carved wooden heart. Made it myself from a piece of the old oak that fell that year. It's pretty, Emma said solemnly. Mom would want us to use it, from the mouths of babes. Jack hung the ornament, and if his eyes were damp, well, the tree lights were bright. Victoria contributed her snowflake and a set of simple glass balls she'd bought in town. Nothing fancy, she said, but Jack noticed they were the exact shade of blue as Emma's eyes. As they worked, Victoria shared stories of lonely Christmases in grand houses, presents that cost fortunes but meant nothing, parties where she knew everyone and no one. One year, she said, adjusting a strand of lights, I asked for a puppy, something alive, something that would love me back. My father got me a gold watch instead, said it was more practical. That's sad, Emma declared with 8-year-old certainty. Christmas isn't about practical. What's it about then? Victoria asked. Emma considered seriously. Family. Being together. Making cookies and singing songs even if Daddy can't carry a tune. Hey now, Jack protested, but he was smiling. And having people you love close by, Emma finished. She looked between Jack and Victoria. That's why this will be the best Christmas, because we're all together. Jack caught Victoria wiping her eyes, and his own throat felt suspiciously tight. His daughter had put into words what he'd been afraid to acknowledge. They felt like a family, looked like a family, were becoming a family in every way that mattered. You know what? Victoria said suddenly. Emma's absolutely right. This will be the best Christmas. She reached for Jack's hand, squeezed it gently. In the glow of the tree lights, with Emma humming carols off-key and snow falling soft outside, Jack squeezed back. Whatever happened after the holidays, whatever truths needed telling, they'd have this. One perfect Christmas, where loneliness was just a memory and love felt possible again. The Sinclair Oil boardroom felt like a tomb after the warmth of the Morrison ranch. Victoria sat at the polished mahogany table, watching her father orchestrate the meeting with military precision. The pipeline expansion dominated the wall display, red, lines cutting through Wyoming townships like surgical incisions. Phase 3, acceleration is ahead of schedule, the project manager announced. We've completed preliminary surveys of the Ironwood corridor. Minimal resistance expected. Victoria's stylus tapped against her tablet. She'd reviewed every document, memorized every affected property. The Morrison ranch sat dead center in the EE. Optimal path, marked with a small notation, priority acquisition, owner financially vulnerable. What's the timeline for land acquisition? Richard Sinclair asked, his grey eyes scanning the room. We begin approaching owners after the holidays. Most are behind on mortgages. The drought hit them hard. We expect 80% voluntary. Sales within 60 days. And the holdouts? Eminent domain proceedings are prepared. The pipeline serves public interest, energy independence, job creation. No judge in Wyoming will block it. Victoria cleared her throat. Have we considered the environmental impact on the watershed? 3 aquifers run through that valley, all within EPA guidelines, someone assured her. Guidelines written when? Victoria pressed. The Ironwood water system is delicate. One spill could contaminate drinking water for thousands. Her father's eyes narrowed. Since when did you become an environmental activist, Victoria? Since we started putting profits over people. The words escaped before she could stop them. Silence fell like a hammer. Board members shifted uncomfortably. Richard Sinclair's expression could have frozen flame. I see, he said slowly. And what would you suggest? Abandoning a $2 billion project because of hypothetical risks? I suggest we explore alternatives. Victoria pulled up her prepared presentation. The northern route adds 40 million, but avoids populated areas entirely. The southern option adds 60 million in 2 years, her father interrupted. Unacceptable. More unacceptable than destroying communities that have existed for over a century. Business isn't sentimental, Victoria. These ranchers are failing anyway. We're offering them a graceful exit. They don't want an exit. They want to keep their homes. Then they should have managed their finances better. Richard's tone brooked. No argument. The Ironwood route is final. If you have personal objections, I suggest you recuse yourself from this project. Victoria straightened. I have professional objections. This route is short-sighted and will generate significant negative publicity. Let me worry about publicity. Her father's smile was sharp as glass. Unless you'd like to explain your sudden expertise in Ironwood Valley. David Chen mentioned seeing you there. Shopping for groceries, I believe, with a local child. The threat hung unspoken but clear. Victoria felt the board's eyes on her, calculating, curious. One wrong word and her father would have investigators, crawling over Jack's life within hours. I've been assessing investment opportunities, she said evenly. Ranch land is undervalued. Due diligence requires understanding the local market. Due diligence, Richard repeated. Is that what we're calling it? After the meeting, Victoria didn't wait for the inevitable summons. She went straight to her office and locked the door, hands shaking as she pulled up the pipeline contracts. Buried in subsection 47, she found what she was looking for, the variance clause. Any significant environmental concern could trigger a mandatory review, delaying the project by months. She needed evidence. Proof that the Ironwood aquifer was more vulnerable than the outdated EPA report suggested. It wouldn't stop the pipeline forever, but it might buy time. Time to find another solution. Time to protect Jack and Emma without revealing her deception. Her phone buzzed. A text from Emma, complete with emoji hearts. Made cookies with Daddy. Saved you the chocolate ones. Victoria stared at the message, then at the pipeline map on her screen. In one world, she was Victoria Sinclair, heir to an empire built on oil and ambition. In the other, she was just Victoria, who tutored a little girl and helped a widowed rancher save his home. The two worlds were colliding faster than she'd anticipated. Her desk phone rang. Her father's extension. My office, Richard Sinclair commanded. Now! Victoria closed the pipeline files and stood. Whatever came next, she'd protect the Morrisons, even if it cost her everything. The walk to her father's office felt like a march to execution. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Denver sprawled below, all glass and steel and progress. Nothing like Ironwood Valley with its worn fence posts and generations-old barns. Nothing like home. The realization stopped her cold. When had the Morrison ranch become home? When had Jack's kitchen table become more real than this corporate fortress? Victoria, her father's secretary, gestured to the massive doors. He's waiting. She squared her shoulders and entered. The battle for Ironwood Valley was about to begin, whether the Morrisons knew it or not. And Victoria Sinclair had already chosen her side. She just prayed she was strong enough to win. Richard Sinclair's office was a monument to power. Oil paintings of pipelines and refineries adorned the walls, while his desk, carved from a single piece of Brazilian walnut, commanded the room like a throne. Victoria sat across from him, maintaining the posture drilled into her since childhood. Straight spine, crossed ankles, hands folded, never show weakness. "Tell me about Jack Morrison," her father said without preamble. Victoria's pulse quickened, but her expression remained neutral. "He's a local rancher consulting on my investment project. What about him? Don't insult my intelligence." Richard slid a folder across the desk. "Private investigator's report. You've been visiting his ranch 3 times a week, having dinner with his family. The child calls you Miss Victoria with obvious affection." Victoria opened the folder, keeping her hands steady. Photos of her at the general store with Emma, entering the Morrison ranch, sitting on Jack's porch. Her stomach churned, but she forced herself to flip through casually. "You hired someone to follow me?" "I hired someone to protect our interests. Imagine my surprise when they reported my daughter playing house with a failing rancher who just happens to own land we need. It's not like that." "Then explain what it is like." Richard leaned back, fingers steepled. "Because, from where I sit, it looks like you're either compromising our position for a romantic entanglement, or you're running some agenda I don't understand. Neither option pleases me." Victoria chose her words carefully. "Jack Morrison has invaluable knowledge about ranching in the valley. His family's been there 5 generations. If I'm going to invest successfully—" "Stop," her father's voice cut like ice. "You've never shown interest in ranch investments before. This sudden passion for cattle and crops coincides remarkably with our pipeline route. Do you think I'm a fool? I think you're seeing conspiracies where there's only coincidence." "Am I?" Richard pulled out another document. "You transferred $15,000 to Morrison's account, personal funds, not corporate. Care to explain?" "Consulting fees, all properly documented. Consulting fees that exactly matched his mortgage arrears." "How fortunate." Victoria met his gaze steadily. "I don't appreciate being spied on. And I don't appreciate being lied to." Richard stood, moving to the window. Denver stretched below, his kingdom of glass and steel. "You're my daughter, Victoria, my heir. Everything I've built will be yours. But that comes with responsibility." "To whom? Shareholders, or to communities we destroy for profit margins?" He turned, something dangerous flickering in his eyes. "Careful. Sentiment is a luxury we can't afford. These ranchers, including your Mr. Morrison, are casualties of progress. The world needs energy. We provide it. At what cost? At any cost. That's what leadership means. Making hard choices others won't." Richard returned to his desk. "You have 48 hours to end whatever this is with Morrison. Transfer him to another consultant if you must maintain the fiction of ranch investments. But no more personal involvement. And if I refuse, then I'll handle Morrison myself. The pipeline needs his land. One way or another, we'll acquire it. I'd prefer he take our generous offer, but if personal feelings are clouding his judgment, or yours, we have other methods." The threat was clear. Victoria stood, gathering her composure like armor. "You'd destroy a man just for owning land you want?" "I'd relocate an obstacle to progress. The fact that you see it as destruction proves you're too emotionally involved." Richard's expression softened marginally. "You're my only child, Victoria. I won't let some cowboy with a pretty face derail your future. This isn't about—" Victoria stopped. Protesting Jack was just a business arrangement would only deepen suspicion. "I understand your position." "Good. 48 hours. And Victoria, the investigator will remain on assignment. For your protection, of course." She left the office with her head high, but inside, panic clawed at her chest. In the elevator, she pulled out her phone. 3 missed calls from Jack, 2 texts from Emma about cookie decorating plans. Her 2 worlds weren't just colliding, they were about to explode. Back in her office, Victoria locked the door and sank into her chair. 48 hours to betray the only real happiness she'd found in years, or refuse and watch her father destroy Jack through other methods, eminent domain, legal harassment, financial pressure until he broke. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Emma. Daddy says you can come early Saturday. We're making ornaments for the church sale. Victoria stared at the message, tears burning her eyes. How could she face them knowing what was coming? How could she sit at their table, accept their trust while her father plotted their destruction? But how could she not? Every moment with them might be the last. Every smile from Emma, every quiet conversation with Jack, soon just memories to warm, cold corporate nights. She typed back, "I'll be there. Save me the glitter glue." Then she opened her laptop and began searching. Environmental lawyers, water table studies, anything that might delay the pipeline. She had 48 hours to find a solution that protected the Morrisons without revealing her identity. 48 hours before her father's ultimatum destroyed everything. The investigator was watching. Her father was waiting. And somewhere, in Ironwood Valley, a little girl was saving glitter glue for ornaments they'd make together. Victoria Sinclair had never felt more alone. Victoria arrived at the Morrison ranch Saturday morning with her heart in her throat. The 48 hours were nearly up, and she'd found nothing. No environmental concerns strong enough to stop the pipeline, no legal precedent to protect Jack's land. She'd decided to tell him everything after the church ornament sale, to confess her deception and face whatever came next. Emma burst from the house before Victoria could park, braids flying. "Miss Victoria, I saved all the best glitter for you." The little girl's enthusiasm was a knife to Victoria's conscience. She gathered Emma into a hug, holding perhaps too tightly. "Easy there," Jack called from the porch, smiling. "She's not going anywhere." If only he knew. They spent the morning crafting ornaments, stars and angels and snowmen, to raise money for the church's food pantry. Victoria tried to memorize every detail. Emma's concentration face as she applied glue, Jack's patient corrections. When glitter went astray, the warmth of the kitchen, despite December's chill. "You're quiet today," Jack observed, catching her hand as she reached for more supplies. "Everything all right?" "Just thinking," Victoria managed, "about how perfect this is." His thumb brushed her knuckles, gentle as spring rain. "Doesn't have to be past tense." Before she could respond, tires crunched on the drive. Through the window, Victoria saw a black town car, sleek, expensive, utterly out of place. Her blood turned to ice. "Expecting someone?" Jack asked, already, moving toward the door. "No," Victoria whispered, but she recognized the car. Her father's personal vehicle. Richard Sinclair emerged like a general surveying enemy territory. His cashmere coat and Italian shoes looked absurd against the ranch's rustic backdrop, but his presence dominated the space. Behind him, David Chen and two other board members formed a phalanx of corporate power. "Daddy?" Emma whispered, pressing close to Jack's leg. "Who's that?" "Don't know, sweetheart." Jack's voice carried protective steel. "Why don't you go upstairs for a bit?" "But Emma..." "Upstairs." The little girl fled, but Victoria caught her frightened glance back. Jack stepped onto the porch and Victoria forced herself to follow, though her legs felt like water. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" Jack's tone was polite but wary. Richard's gaze swept over the modest ranch house, the weathered barn, the ancient truck parked beside Victoria's rental. His expression suggested he'd catalogued and dismissed it all in seconds. "Mr. Morrison, I presume. Richard Sinclair. Sinclair Oil." He didn't offer his hand. "I believe you know my daughter." The words fell like bombs in the quiet morning. "Victoria." Watched comprehension dawn across Jack's face. Confusion, disbelief, and finally a terrible understanding. "Your daughter," Jack repeated slowly. He turned to Victoria, and the betrayal in his eyes nearly dropped her to her knees. "Victoria Sinclair, oil heiress." "Jack, I can explain." "How convenient," Richard interrupted smoothly. "My daughter, embedding herself in your life just as we finalize pipeline routes through your land. Tell me, Morrison, did you really think a woman like her would be interested in a failing rancher? Or were you hoping to leverage the relationship for a better buyout price?" "Stop it," Victoria snapped, but her father continued. $15,000 she paid you. Consulting fees, she claimed, but we both know what you were really selling. Jack's face went white, then red. "Get off my property." "Gladly. But first, let's discuss business." Richard pulled out a folder. "Sinclair Oil is prepared to offer you 3 times market value for your ranch. More than generous, considering we could take it through eminent domain for far less." I said, "Get off my property." "Jack, please." Victoria stepped forward. "Let me explain." "Explain what?" Jack's voice was deadly quiet. "That everything was a lie, every dinner, every moment with Emma, every—" He stopped, jaw clenched. "Was any of it real?" "All of it was real," Victoria said desperately. "My feelings, the time we spent." "Your feelings?" Richard laughed, sharp and cold. "Victoria doesn't have feelings, Morrison. She has strategies. Though I admit this one surprised even me. Playing house, tutoring the child, quite thorough. That's not what happened." Victoria rounded on her father. "I went back because I care about them, not because of your pipeline." "The pipeline you fought against in board meetings," David Chen added helpfully. "After spending weeks here? That seems like corporate espionage, not care." Victoria saw the final blow land. Jack's expression shuttered completely, the warmth she'd grown to love replaced by stone. "Emma!" he called, voice rough. "Come down here, please." "Jack, don't—" Victoria started, but he cut her off with a look. Emma appeared, clutching her favorite stuffed horse. She looked between the adults, sensing the tension. "Daddy, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Say goodbye to Miss Victoria. She won't be coming around anymore." "What?" Emma's face crumpled. "But we're making ornaments, and Christmas is coming. She promised—" "Promises don't always mean anything," Jack said, eyes never leaving Victoria's face. "Sometimes people say things they don't mean to get what they want." "That's not true," Emma protested. "Miss Victoria loves us. She said, 'Emma, room now.'" Jack's tone brooked no argument. The little girl fled, sobbing. The sound of her door slamming echoed across the ranch. "Well," Richard said, satisfaction dripping from the word. "I believe we're done here. Morrison, you have 1 week to accept our offer. After that, we proceed with eminent domain." He turned to Victoria. "Come, we have a board meeting." "I'm not going anywhere with you," Victoria said. "Yes, you are. Unless you want me to explain to Morrison exactly how you've been stealing corporate intelligence. I'm sure the sheriff would be interested in that conversation." "Jack," Victoria turned to him, desperate. "I never meant for this to happen. I fell in love." "Don't!" The word cracked like a whip. "Just don't. Take your money, your lies and your pipeline, and get the hell off my land. All of you." Victoria reached for him, but he stepped back as if her touch would burn. Behind her, her father opened the car door. "Victoria, now." She looked once more at Jack, at the man who'd shown her what family meant, what home felt like, what love could be. His face was carved granite, but she caught the glimmer of moisture in his eyes before he turned away. "I'm sorry," she whispered, knowing it would never be enough. She got in the car. As they drove away, she saw Emma's face in the upstairs window, tears streaming. The little girl waved, small, hopeless, heartbroken. Victoria didn't wave back. She'd lost that right. "That was cruel," she told her father, as the ranch disappeared behind them. "That was necessary," Richard replied. "You'll thank me eventually. Morrison was a distraction you couldn't afford." "He was everything," Victoria said quietly. "Then you're a fool." Her father's voice held no sympathy. "But you're my fool. We'll fix this. The pipeline will proceed, you'll take your rightful place in the company, and this unfortunate episode will be forgotten." Victoria stared out the window, at the valley she'd grown to love, at the land her father would destroy. She thought of Jack explaining which fields held memories, of Emma naming the horses they'd never own, of ornaments half-finished on a kitchen table she'd never see again. "I'll never forgive you for this," she told her father. "You'll never forgive." "Yourself," he replied. "Which is worse?" As the miles stretched between her and the Morrison ranch, Victoria knew he was right. She'd destroyed the only real thing in her carefully constructed life. And forgiveness, from Jack, from Emma, from herself, was a luxury she'd never afford. The Morrison ranch felt like a cemetery, Jack moved through the motions of daily life, feeding cattle, mending fence, checking water troughs, but the heart had gone out of it. 3 days since Victoria's betrayal, and the silence felt heavier than Wyoming snow. Emma hadn't spoken beyond single-word answers. She picked at her meals, ignored her homework, and spent hours in her room with the door closed. The sound of her crying at night was killing him by degrees. "Em?" Jack knocked on her door Thursday evening. "Dinner's ready." "Not hungry." "You need to eat something, sweetheart." "Why?" The door opened a crack, revealing red-rimmed eyes. "So I can be strong for when they take our house." Miss Victoria's daddy said one week. "That's 4 more days." Jack's chest tightened. He'd tried to shield her from the worst of it, but Emma was too smart, too observant. She'd heard enough to understand their world was ending. "We're not losing the house," he said, though the words felt like lies. "Then why did you pack Mom's pictures?" He had no answer for that. After Victoria left, he'd started boxing things: Sarah's photos, Emma's baby clothes, family heirlooms, preparing for the inevitable. Sinclair Oil would take the ranch, and they'd need somewhere to go. Chuck had offered his spare room, but the charity burned like acid. "Come eat," he said finally. "Please." Emma followed him to the kitchen, where 2 plates of reheated stew waited. The third chair, Victoria's chair, sat empty. Emma stared at it as she pushed food around her plate. "She lied to us," Emma said suddenly. "The whole time she was lying." "Yes," Jack agreed, "no point sugaring it." "But why?" Emma's voice cracked. "I thought she loved us. She said she did. She helped with homework and made cookies and fixed my hair for picture day. Why would she pretend?" "I don't know, baby." Jack reached across the table, covering her small hand with his. "Sometimes people aren't who we think they are." "She was exactly who I thought she was," Emma insisted. "When she looked at you, her face got soft. When she helped me read, she was patient even when I was stupid." "That was real, Daddy." "I know it was." Jack wanted to argue, to protect his daughter from hoping for something that would never be. But the truth was, he'd seen it too. The way Victoria lit up when Emma succeeded at something, the gentle touches that lingered, the peace in her eyes when she sat at their table, which made the betrayal worse. She'd felt something real and chosen her father's money anyway. "Doesn't matter now," he said roughly. "She's gone. What if she comes back?" "She won't." "But what if—" "Emma, enough!" The sharpness in his voice made her flinch. "Victoria Sinclair is done with us. We were just a project to her, a problem to solve for her daddy's pipeline. Now eat your dinner." Emma pushed back from the table, stew untouched. "I hate you," she whispered, then fled. Jack sat alone in the kitchen where Victoria had helped make breakfast, where she'd tutored Emma with endless patience, where she'd shared stories of her lonely childhood. The Christmas tree lights blinked. In the living room, illuminating her paper snowflake with its hidden initials. He should take it down, pack away everything she'd touched. But his hands wouldn't move. The mail slot rattled. Jack found another letter from Sinclair Oil, the 3rd since Sunday. He didn't open it. The message was clear: sell or be forced out. David Chen had called twice, each time increasing the offer, each time adding veiled threats about legal costs and eminent domain proceedings. His phone buzzed. Chuck's name appeared. "Jack, you need to know something," his friend said without preamble. "Martha Henderson was in the city yesterday. Saw your lady friend coming out of some big building crying, her eyes out. Security had to basically carry her to a car." "She's not my lady friend," Jack said automatically. "Right. Well, Martha's nephew works in that building, says there was some kind of confrontation. Richard Sinclair fired half his board and put his daughter under some kind of corporate house arrest. Can't leave without security, can't access her accounts, full lockdown." Jack told himself he didn't care. Victoria had made her choice. "Also," Chuck continued, "I've been asking around about that pipeline. Turns out little Miss Sinclair's been fighting it for months. Environmental objections, route changes, delay tactics. Cost her daddy's company millions already. Doesn't matter. And Jack, that consulting contract she gave you." "My lawyer looked at it. It's ironclad in your favor. She could have put in clauses to protect herself, ways to claw back the money. She didn't. She made sure you'd be protected no matter what. Jack hung up without responding. He didn't want to hear how Victoria might have tried to help while actively destroying them. The result was the same. In 4 days, Sinclair Oil would begin proceedings to take his land. He climbed the stairs to Emma's room. She'd cried herself to sleep, Victoria's friendship bracelet still wrapped around her wrist. On her nightstand sat the half-finished ornament they'd been making together, an angel with glitter wings and a crooked smile. Jack picked it up, remembering Victoria's laugh as Emma insisted angels should wear cowboy boots. 3 people making Christmas decorations like a real family, like they had a future. He set the angel down gently and kissed Emma's forehead. She stirred but didn't wake. 4 more days, then Sinclair Oil would take everything, the ranch, the memories, the last place Sarah had lived. But worse, they'd already taken Emma's joy, her trust in people, her belief that love meant something, that Jack would never forgive. Victoria stared at the letter in her hands, Emma's careful cursive blurred by her own tears. Chuck Williams had somehow gotten it past her father's security, slipping it under her apartment door while the guards were changing shifts. Dear Miss Victoria, Daddy says you lied to us, but I don't understand. When you helped me with math, you always said showing your work was important. So here is my work. You came back even when your car was fixed. You knew Daddy's favorite coffee without asking. You cried when I sang at the church practice. You made the snowflake with our initials. Your face got happy when Daddy smiled. That equals love, not lying. Math doesn't lie. Please come home. The angel ornament is waiting for you to help finish it. Love, Emma P.S. Daddy cries when he thinks I'm asleep. Victoria pressed the letter to her chest, feeling something shift inside her. Steel, replacing despair. For 4 days, she'd accepted her father's imprisonment, paralyzed by guilt and the magnitude of what she'd lost. But Emma's words cut through the self-pity with 8-year-old clarity. Math doesn't lie. She moved to her laptop, fingers flying. Across keys, her father had frozen her personal accounts, but forgotten her mother's trust, the one created before their marriage outside Sinclair control. $30 million, sitting untouched since her mother's death 10 years ago. Victoria pulled up property records, auction sites, financial documents. If her father wanted to play corporate warfare, she'd use every weapon at her disposal. The Morrison ranch was worth perhaps $2 million at market value. She could buy every property around it, create a buffer zone even Sinclair Oil couldn't. Penetrate. But first, she had to get out. At 2 a.m., Victoria triggered the building's fire alarm. In the chaos of evacuation, she slipped past her security detail, wearing a maintenance worker's uniform she'd ordered online. 20 minutes later, she was in a rental car heading for Wyoming, Emma's letter tucked against her heart. Her phone exploded with calls, her father, security, board members. Bored. She threw it out the window somewhere past Fort Collins. Let them track a device heading for Mexico. She'd paid a trucker headed south to carry it. The sun was rising as she reached Ironwood Valley. The ranch looked exactly as she'd left it, except for the foreclosure auction sign posted by the gate. Today, they'd moved up the timeline. Cars already lined the drive. Investors, developers, and Sinclair Oil representatives circled like vultures. Victoria parked behind them all and made her way to the house. "Ma'am, this is a private auction," a security guard began. "I'm a bidder," Victoria said simply and pushed past. The auction was being held in the front yard. Jack stood on his porch, jaw tight, while Emma clung to his leg. Chuck and other neighbors formed a protective cluster around them, but they were vastly outnumbered by corporate interests. "Sold!" The auctioneer's voice rang out. "To Sinclair Oil Corporation for $2.8 million. "No," Emma's cry pierced. "The morning heir, $3 million, Victoria called out, stepping through the crowd. Every head turned. Jack's face went white. Emma broke free from her father and flew across the yard. "Miss Victoria, you came back! I knew you'd come back. Victoria caught the little girl, holding her tight. I got your letter, sweetheart. Your math was perfect. This auction is closed, David Chen protested. No, it's not. Victoria stood, Emma's hand firmly in hers. $3 million, cash. You don't have authority to bid, Chen sputtered. Your accounts are frozen, my personal accounts, not the Morrison family trust established this morning. Victoria pulled out documentation. $3 million cash, immediate transfer. Unless Sinclair Oil wants to go higher. Chen fumbled for his phone, likely calling her father. Around them, neighbors began to murmur. Chuck was grinning openly. Victoria, Jack's voice was rough. What are you doing? Showing my work, she said, meeting his eyes. Like Emma taught me. Going once, the auctioneer called, sensing drama that would make for legendary gossip. Going twice, $5 million, Chen shouted desperately. 6, Victoria countered without hesitation. This is ridiculous, Chen protested. You're bidding against your own company. I resigned this morning, Victoria said calmly. Effective immediately. $7 million if you're still interested. Chen's phone rang. Even from across the yard, they could hear Richard Sinclair's roar. But corporate procedures were corporate procedures. Without board approval, Chen couldn't go higher. $7 million going once, going twice, sold to the Morrison Family Trust. Emma shrieked with joy. Chuck led the neighbors in whoops and applause. But Victoria only had eyes for Jack, who stood frozen on the porch. You bought my ranch, he said slowly. No, Victoria corrected, pulling out another document. I bought it for you. The trust names you and Emma as sole beneficiaries. I'm just the initial funding source. I can't. You can, you will. Victoria climbed the porch steps, stopping just out of reach. Because Emma's right. Math doesn't lie, and neither did I. Not about what matters. I love you, Jack Morrison. I love Emma. I love this ranch and this valley and the life we were building. Together. You lied about who you were, Jack said. But the anger had faded to confusion. I lied about my name, everything else, every smile, every meal, every moment. That was real. That was me. Victoria took a breath. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking you to take me back. I'm just asking you to keep your home. For Emma, for the 5 generations before you, for the generations still to come. She set the trust documents on the porch rail and turned to go. She'd done what she came to do. Victoria, wait! Jack's voice stopped her at the bottom of the porch steps. Around them, the auction crowd was dispersing, Chen frantically coordinating with Sinclair Oil lawyers while neighbors celebrated. But Victoria only heard Jack's footsteps, on the worn wood behind her. You gave up everything, he said quietly. Your inheritance, your career, your family. I gave up nothing that matters. Victoria turned to face him. And gained everything that does. Even if you can't forgive me, even if I never see you again, knowing you and Emma are safe, that's worth any price. Before Jack could respond, the rumble of engines filled the air. 3 black SUVs tore up the drive, followed by a convoy of Sinclair Oil vehicles. Richard Sinclair emerged from the lead car like a force of nature, his face promising retribution. Everyone off this property, he commanded. This auction was illegal. My daughter had no authority. Your daughter is a legal adult with full control of her mother's trust, Victoria interrupted. Check the documents, Father. Mum made sure you could never touch it. Richard's expression darkened further. You think you've won? I'll bury this ranch in legal challenges, environmental violations, zoning disputes, water rights. Actually, a new voice interrupted. You won't. Everyone turned as a woman in a sharp suit stepped forward. Victoria recognized her, Patricia Hartley, the environmental lawyer she'd contacted days ago. Ms. Hartley, Victoria breathed. But you thought I ignored your emails. Patricia smiled. On the contrary, your concerns about the Ironwood Aquifer were well-founded. My team's been investigating for 72 hours. She handed Richard a thick folder. Cease and desist order, Mr. Sinclair. The EPA is launching a full review of your pipeline route based on new geological surveys. Minimum 18-month delay, possibly permanent injunction. Richard's face went purple. This is corporate sabotage. This is protecting Wyoming's water supply, Patricia corrected. Your own daughter's research uncovered critical vulnerabilities your team overlooked or ignored. The wind picked up and Victoria noticed the sky darkening, another winter storm approaching, as sudden as the one that started everything. Inside, Jack ordered Emma, who'd been watching wide-eyed. Now, sweetheart. But Daddy. Emma, please. The little girl ran for the house as the first snow began to fall. The auction crowd scattered for their vehicles, but Richard Sinclair stood his ground. You've destroyed everything I built for you, he told Victoria, voice deadly quiet. 40 years of work and you throw it away for what? A rundown ranch and a widower playing cowboy. I threw away nothing, Victoria replied. I chose love over profit. Mom would have understood. Your mother was weak. My mother was the only thing that made you human. Victoria's voice carried steel she'd inherited from him, turned now to different purpose. She died believing there was good in you. I won't make that mistake. Richard stepped forward, and suddenly Jack was there, solid as a mountain between them. Sir, I'm going to ask you once to leave my property, Jack said calmly. This is still my land until those papers are signed, and you're trespassing. Your land? Richard sneered. You mean the land my daughter just bought? You're nothing but a charity case, Morrison. She'll tire of playing rancher's wife within a year. That's enough. Chuck Williams and 5 other ranchers had formed a line beside Jack. Mr. Sinclair, you heard the man. Time to go. For a moment, violence crackled in the air like lightning. Then David Chen touched Richard's arm. Sir, the media has been alerted. Photographers are already... This isn't over, Richard told Victoria. You're no daughter of mine. I haven't been your daughter in years, Victoria replied. I was your heir, your protégé, your project, but never your daughter, not since Mum died. Richard turned without another word, his convoy following through the now heavy snow. But at the gate, he paused. Through the swirling white, Victoria saw him look. Back, just once, at the daughter he'd lost in his pursuit of empire. Then he was gone. Hell of a morning, Chuck said, breaking the silence. Jack, I believe you've got some papers to sign. Make this all official. Jack looked at Victoria, something unreadable in his eyes. Inside, all of us. Storm's getting worse. They crowded. Into the kitchen. Chuck, Patricia Hartley, several neighbors, and Emma, who'd snuck back downstairs. Victoria spread the trust documents on the table, the same table where she'd first shared breakfast with the Morrisons. I can't accept this, Jack said. $7 million. It's not charity, Victoria interrupted. It's restitution for what my family tried to take, for the lies I told, for the pain I caused. She met his eyes. Please, Jack, let me do this one thing right. Emma tugged on her father's sleeve. Daddy, the storm brought her back, just like the first time. That means something, doesn't it? Outside, the blizzard howled, cutting them off from the world. Inside, the kitchen glowed with warmth and possibility. Jack picked up the pen, hesitated, then signed his name with firm strokes. For Emma, he said, and for the generations before us. For the generations to come, Victoria whispered. Their eyes met across the table, and in that moment the rest of the world, Richard Sinclair, pipeline threats, corporate empires, faded like snow in spring. The storm had brought her back indeed. The question now was whether she could stay. The storm raged for 3 hours, trapping everyone in the Morrison kitchen. Patricia Hartley worked through environmental documents at one end of the table, while neighbors made sandwiches at the other. Emma had crawled into Victoria's lap, refusing to let go, as if releasing her grip might make Victoria disappear again. So what happens now? Chuck asked, gesturing between Jack and Victoria. With the ranch safe and all? An awkward silence fell. Jack hadn't spoken directly to Victoria since signing the papers, though she'd caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. Now I find somewhere to stay while I figure out my next moves, Victoria said carefully. The bed and breakfast. Perhaps burned down, Martha Henderson supplied. Lightning strike last month. Nearest lodging is 50 miles out, and that road won't be passable for days in this weather. Emma's arms tightened. You can stay here. Right, Daddy. We have room. Jack's jaw worked. Pride, hurt, and something softer warred on his face. Storms. Too bad to drive anywhere, he said finally. Guest room's yours if you need it. Jack, just for the storm, he clarified, not meeting her eyes. We can figure out the rest later. The neighbors exchanged knowing looks but kept their thoughts to themselves. As the afternoon wore on, they drifted home between snow squalls until only the Morrisons and Victoria remained. I should help with dinner, Victoria offered, setting Emma down gently. I've got it, Jack said, already at the stove. At least, let me set the table. Said I've got it. His tone was firm but not unkind. You've done enough today. Victoria sat back down, watching him work. He moved around the kitchen with the same quiet efficiency she remembered. But there was a distance now, a careful space he maintained between them. Emma, oblivious to the tension, chattered about school, the Christmas pageant, how Mrs. Patterson said her reading was almost at grade level now. Because Miss Victoria helped me, she added proudly. She's the best teacher. Emma, Jack warned. What? She is. Emma turned to Victoria. You're staying for Christmas, right? You promised, remember, before everything got messed up. Emma, that's enough, Jack said. Miss Victoria has her own life to get back to. What life? Emma asked with 8-year-old directness. She gave up her mean daddy and her big job for us. That means we're her life now. Emma Marie Morrison, it's... Okay, Victoria interrupted softly. She's not wrong. I don't have anywhere else to be. No job, no family, no home except a penthouse I never liked. She met Jack's eyes. But I won't impose where I'm not wanted. After the storm passes, I'll... Go where? Emma demanded. Victoria didn't have an answer for that. They ate dinner in relative silence, broken only by Emma's determined attempts at conversation. When Jack took Emma up for her bath, Victoria cleaned the kitchen, needing something to do with her hands. She was drying the last plate when Jack returned. She wants you to read tonight's chapter, he said without preamble. Charlotte's Web. We're near the end. I shouldn't... Please. The word seemed pulled from him. She's been through enough. Let her have this. Victoria found Emma tucked in bed, the book waiting on her nightstand. The little girl's face lit up when she entered. You came. Your dad said you wanted me to read. I want you to stay, Emma corrected. Forever. But reading is good too. Victoria settled in the familiar chair, opening to the bookmarked page. Charlotte was weak now, her web-spinning days ending. Emma listened with rapt attention, occasionally reaching out to touch Victoria's hand, as if confirming she was real. Why did you do all this for me? He asked. I don't deserve it. I've never done anything for you. Victoria read in Wilbur's voice. You have been my friend, replied Charlotte. That in itself is a tremendous thing. Emma sighed contentedly. Charlotte's like you, she said. Saving someone just because she loves them. Victoria's throat tightened. She finished the chapter, tucked the covers around Emma, and turned to go. Miss Victoria? Emma's voice was small. I know Daddy's mad about the lying, but I'm not. You lied about your name, but you told the truth about loving us. That's what matters, right? Oh, sweetheart. And Daddy still loves you too. He just needs time to remember that love is stronger than hurt, like in all the good stories. Victoria kissed Emma's forehead, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. In the hallway, she found Jack leaning against the wall, eyes suspiciously bright. She's something, Victoria managed. Yeah, Jack agreed roughly. She is. They stood there, 2 feet and 1,000 miles apart, while the storm howled outside and their daughter. When had she become theirs? Drifted off to sleep, believing in happy endings. Thank you, Jack said finally, "for saving our home, for coming back, for reading to her, for—" He stopped, shook his head. "Just thank you, always," Victoria whispered, and meant it. Jack nodded once and walked away, leaving Victoria alone with the sound of wind and the weight of unspoken words. But for the first time since her father's revelation, she felt something like hope. Emma was right. Love was stronger than hurt. It just needed time to heal. Spring came to Ironwood Valley like a benediction. The snow melted, revealing green shoots of hope across the Morrison ranch. Victoria stood on the porch she'd helped Jack repair, watching Emma chase the new chickens around the yard. 3 months. Since the storm, since the auction, since she'd chosen love over empire. "Coffee?" Jack appeared beside her, offering a steaming mug. Their fingers brushed in the exchange, no longer accidental, not quite intentional. "Thanks." Victoria breathed in the familiar aroma. "Remember when you first made me coffee? I pretended to like it black because I didn't want to seem high maintenance. I knew," Jack admitted with a slight smile. "Set out cream and sugar the next morning. You looked so relieved." They stood in comfortable silence, watching their daughter, the word came naturally now, collect eggs with careful concentration. The ranch thrived under their partnership. Victoria's business acumen, combined with Jack's practical knowledge, had transformed the struggling property into a model of sustainable farming. "Environmental lawyer called," Jack said. "Pipeline's officially dead. Your research held up under federal review. Our valley's safe? Our valley's safe." He paused, weighing words. "You did that, Victoria. Saved all of us." "We did it together," she corrected. "The whole community standing against them. Led by you." Their eyes met, held. 3 months of careful distance, of healing trust, of learning each other anew. Victoria had kept her word, stayed through the storm, then found a small apartment in town. But she was at the ranch daily, helping with chores, homework, life. "Daddy! Miss Victoria!" Emma ran over, basket of eggs clutched carefully. "Look, 12 today. The chickens must be happy." "Happy chickens, happy life," Jack agreed, ruffling her hair. "Why don't you take those inside? We'll make that omelette you like." Emma beamed and scampered off. In her wake, silence stretched between the adults. Not uncomfortable now, but full of possibility. "I've been thinking," Jack said slowly, "about the future. The ranch is doing well, Emma's thriving, and you—" He stopped, started again. "That apartment in town must get lonely." Victoria's heart accelerated. "Sometimes. And the drive out here twice a day wastes gas." "True, Emma mentions every night how much easier homework would be if you didn't have to leave. She's mentioned that to me too." Jack turned to face her fully, vulnerability clear in his eyes. "I'm not good at this. Sarah was my first everything. First love, first loss, first everything. But these past months, watching you choose us again every day, seeing you help Emma with math and muck stalls without complaint—" "Jack, let me finish, please." He took a breath. "I love you, Victoria. Not the woman I thought you were, not the woman you pretended to be, but you. The woman who gave up everything to save a valley, who reads bedtime stories with voices, who learned to milk cows because Emma thought it was important." Victoria's eyes burned. "I love you too, both of you, so much it terrifies me. Then come home," Jack said simply. "Not as our benefactor or Emma's tutor or my business partner. Come home as family." "Are you sure? After everything led us here," Jack interrupted. "Maybe that first storm didn't bring you to our door by accident. Maybe some things are meant to be, just take the long way around." Victoria thought of her mother's trust saving the ranch, of Emma's letter bringing her back, of all the small miracles that had led to this moment. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes to all of it." Jack's smile transformed his face. He pulled her close, and Victoria melted into him, feeling pieces of herself click into place. Home, family, love. Finally, Emma's voice rang out from the kitchen window. "I told you she'd say yes. Now can we plan the wedding?" They broke apart, laughing. "One step at a time, sweetheart," Jack called back. But Victoria saw him palm the small velvet box he'd been carrying for weeks, waiting for courage, waiting for the right moment, waiting for spring to heal winter's wounds. Soon, she thought, catching his eye. But not today. Today was for new beginnings, fresh starts, and the simple joy of coming home. 5 years later, the Morrison ranch sprawled across the valley like a living testament to what love could build. The original 640 acres had grown to nearly 1,000, incorporating the old Harrison place that Victoria had finally purchased and restored. Where broken fences once sagged, strong new rails ran straight and true. The barn that had threatened to collapse now stood proud, its red paint fresh in the morning sun. Victoria Morrison, the name still made her smile, stood on the same porch where Jack had first invited her in from the storm. But now her hand rested on a belly swollen with their third child, wedding ring catching the light. Inside, she could hear the chaos of breakfast. 13-year-old Emma trying to help the twins, Jack's patient voice guiding them all. Mama. Ben. Put syrup in his hair. 3-year-old Jake's outraged voice carried clearly. Did not, Ben protested. It jumped. Syrup doesn't jump, buddy. Jack's rumble held barely contained laughter. Victoria entered to find her husband wiping syrup from Ben's dark curls while Jake climbed onto Emma's lap, seeking justice. The twins had Jack's eyes, but Victoria's determined chin, a combination that promised interesting teenage years ahead. How's my favorite chaos? Victoria asked, kissing Jack's cheek before inspecting the damage. Sticky but manageable, Jack replied, pulling her close for a proper kiss that made Emma groan dramatically. You guys are gross, the teenager declared. But she was smiling. Worse than the Hendersons, and they've been married for 40 years. Speaking of the Hendersons, Victoria said, accepting the plate Jack offered, Martha wants to know if we can host the Valley meeting next month. Something about pipeline companies sniffing around again. Different company, same bad idea, Jack said, but they'll find the Ironwood Valley Protection Association a bit tougher than they expect. Victoria smiled. The association she'd founded had grown to include every ranch family in the valley, pooling resources for legal protection and environmental monitoring. They'd faced down 2 more pipeline attempts and a corporate farming consortium. Each time the community stood together, stronger for the bonds forged in that first fight. Mommy, story, Ben asked, syrup crisis forgotten. Which one, sweetheart? The Storm Princess, both twins chorused. Emma rolled her eyes fondly. They always want that one, because it's the best, Jake said solemnly. The princess saves everyone, and gets the cowboy prince and the best big sister ever. Smooth talker, Emma ruffled his hair, just like Dad. Victoria caught Jack's eye over their children's heads. 5 years of mornings like this, 5 years of building something real from the ashes of corporate ambitions. Her father had been wrong. She hadn't thrown away an empire. She'd traded it for something worth infinitely more. All right, Victoria settled into her chair, twins scrambling onto her lap. Once upon a time, on a night when the snow fell like stars, a lost princess found her way home. Jack's hand found her shoulder. Warm and steady, Emma leaned against his other side. The twins listened with rapt attention. They'd never give anything else. Outside, the ranch stretched toward mountains that had watched over the valley for countless generations. Inside, the Morrison family wove their story together, strand by precious strand. This was her empire now, love, laughter, and land that would never be for sale. The Ironwood Valley Community Center overflowed with neighbors, friends, and family as Emma Morrison took the podium. 18 years old, valedictorian, headed to art school on a full scholarship. She was everything her parents had dreamed and more. They say it takes a village, Emma began, her voice clear and strong. But sometimes it takes a storm to build that village. Victoria reached for Jack's hand, their fingers intertwining automatically. Between them, the twins, now 8, and barely containing their pride, fidgeted in their Sunday best. Baby Sarah, 5 years old and named for the grandmother she'd never meet, sat on Victoria's lap, drawing horses on the program. 13 years ago, a blizzard brought my bonus mom to our door, Emma continued, using the term she'd chosen herself years ago. She could have been anywhere in the world, but she was on Highway 287 when Dad found her. That storm changed everything. Chuck Williams wiped his eyes unabashedly. Martha Henderson clutched her husband's arm. Even Patricia Hartley, now a close family friend, looked suspiciously misty. My first mom, used to say that love plants seeds we might never see bloom. She planted seeds of love in Dad that kept him going through the hardest times. And when Victoria arrived, those seeds were ready to grow again. Victoria felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Jack's hand tightened around hers. But Victoria didn't just join our family. She saved our entire valley. She stood up to her own father, sacrificed her inheritance, and chose community over corporation. Because of her, every family here still owns their land. Because of her, our water runs clean. Because of her, Ironwood Valley remains home. The audience burst into spontaneous applause. In the front row, Richard Sinclair sat rigidly, a surprise guest whose presence had shocked everyone. 5 years of estrangement had aged him, but he'd come to see his granddaughter graduate. "So thank you," Emma said, looking directly at her parents. "Dad, for showing me that strength comes from kindness. Mum, for proving that love is worth any sacrifice. You gave me roots and wings, everything a girl could need." She smiled, that brilliant smile that was all Sarah but delivered with Victoria's confidence. "And to my fellow graduates, remember that sometimes the best storms aren't the ones we weather, but the ones that blow us exactly where we need to be." December wind howled across Ironwood Valley, rattling the windows of the Morrison ranch. Victoria sat by the fire, baby Sarah asleep in her arms, while Jack helped the twins with their homework at the kitchen table. Emma's latest painting, a landscape of the ranch in snow, hung above the mantel, shipped from art school with love. The phone rang sharp in the peaceful evening. "Morrison Ranch," Jack answered, then listened intently. "Where exactly?" "Don't worry, I'll be right there." He hung up, already reaching for his coat. Car broke down on 287. Young couple, sounds like they're in trouble. In this weather? Victoria stood carefully, not wanting to wake Sarah. "Jack, be careful." He kissed her forehead, then the baby's. "Always am. Boys, help your mother while I'm gone." "Yes, Dad," the twins chorused, already moving to take the baby. Victoria followed Jack to the door, pulling his scarf tighter. "The last time you went out in a storm like this, I found everything I ever wanted," Jack finished, cupping her face gently. "Maybe someone else needs that kind of luck tonight." 20 minutes later, Victoria heard the truck return. She opened the door to find Jack helping a young couple up the steps, the woman visibly pregnant, both of them shivering. "Power steering gave out," Jack explained. "Told them about the best mechanic in Wyoming. Chuck'll fix them up tomorrow." Victoria was already moving, 13 years of practice making her efficient. "Come in, get warm. I'll make coffee. When are you due?" 2 weeks, the woman managed through chattering teeth. "We were trying to make it to my mother's before the baby comes," Victoria finished gently. "I understand. Sometimes storms have their own timing." She settled them by the fire, brought blankets and hot drinks. The twins peeked shyly from the stairs while Jack called Chuck about the car. "Thank you," the young man said earnestly. "We didn't know what we'd do out there." "Someone helped us once," Victoria said simply. "Now we pass it on." Later, after their guests were settled, in the spare room, Victoria found the old Mercedes key in the kitchen drawer. She held it up to the light, remembering another night, another storm, another beginning. "Full circle," Jack murmured, arms wrapping around her from behind. "The best kind," Victoria agreed, leaning into his warmth. Outside, snow fell like blessings. On the valley they'd fought to save. Inside, the Morrison house sheltered travelers again, continuing a tradition as old as kindness and as enduring as love. Some storms, Victoria knew now, weren't meant to be weathered. They were meant to bring you home.